Carly.
And I'm Laurel.
I live with cerebral palsy.
And I live with a visual impairment.
I can't really walk.
And I can't really see.
So together, we're disabled as folk.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of Disabled as Folk. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, Carly.
Hi, Laurel.
How are you?
I'm good. How's your week been?
You know, it's been pretty good. I cannot complain. Literally nothing has happened because we're in pandemic times, as you know.
Yes.
So I'm very excited to see you on this digital platform. It's been great. It's been a while.
It feels weird that we're not in the same room, but we'll do this thing.
You know what? We're going to make it work. So to our listeners that can't see us, we are in separate rooms. So hopefully our audio is okay and we are sounding good. But we're happy you're here. Thank you for listening. We're excited to start this off. So speaking of that, Carly, do you maybe want to start with us explaining our disabilities to our listeners so they kind of can learn more about us?
Yeah, so I have cerebral palsy, which is a disability that has to do a lot with brain and motor control. I use a power chair and a mobility service dog as my two main mobility aids, but sometimes I also use manual chairs and or walkers.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, it's not awesome, but it's...
It is quite awesome. I'll take it.
It's part of our life. Hello, everybody. As I said at the top, my name is Laurel. I have a visual impairment called Stickler syndrome. It is a genetic impairment, which essentially means that I am extremely nearsighted. It also means that I have trouble with my bones. So my bones are super creaky. I'm like a glorified door from a horror film when I stand up or move. And I also have very stickler-based features, so flat nose and a larger forehead, things like that that go with that disorder. But overall, I am living my best disabled life, making it work.
Fun fact, I had no idea that it had anything to do with your bones, so we can be like 80-year-old best friends together. I love it.
I am ready to have people hear us walking down the street because our bones are just breaking every step that we take. So that's why also you can catch us. If you ever feel like chasing us down, we are the best targets because we cannot run very fast. So we're super athletic is what I'm trying to say with that.
I do have a horn though.
You have ooh, so you could scare people.
Yes.
How blaring is it? Is it like a truck backing up?
Well, I think my dogs would do a better job of scaring people than it would be me, but...
How loud are we talking? Like, is it like...
I don't know. I don't know if you can hear it, but...
Are you actually going to try and do it? Oh, my pizza pocket's done.
Does the mic even pick it up?
It literally sounds like my pizza pocket is ready to go out of the microwave. I love that. I love it, love it.
So essentially you're telling me I'm a microwave.
Well, I mean... You're not a microwave. You are part technology, you know? So, and you're very hot. You're hot and spicy. You're ready in 30 minutes. So anyway, should we jump into our topic today?
Yes.
It's a big one that we wanted to talk about. So as I'm sure you've been through, Carly, I know I have, being a disabled person does come with some challenges with other people, more specifically for at least me in school with bullying. So we kind of want to talk about our experiences with bullying, maybe some ways that we've coped with it, and also saying to any bullies out there to stop doing it because you shouldn't and it hurts people's feelings. So do you want to maybe talk about it? Like, did you face any bullying when you were in school and how did you manage it?
Where do we start in the world of bullying? I don't even know. Like, I think that my situation, like, sometimes I think I'm pretty lucky because I'm pretty, like, I can manage essentially independent, but except for the fact that my chair sticks out like a sore thumb. So going back to like elementary school and high school, those two in particular, they were rough. They were like, I got everything like wheelie, and I only got asked to pop a wheelie, and people would ask, for rides and things like that.
Right.
Like, that was kind of the, like, I don't want to call it cute, but the whole, like, okay part of bullying. But when it came to like not being invited to things because my friends didn't know what to do with me, and that theme has kind of followed me through adulthood, right? Like they're just like, yeah, she'll figure it out. She can come if she can
Right.
come. But then I end up never being asked, right?
Right.
Because they're too scared to ask what they can do. So I don't know if I necessarily got the like I'm gonna laugh in your face aspect of bullying,
Right.
but I definitely got the whole not being included, very much different than others, which is very different from what my home life was like.
Right.
Like my home life was my parents being like, I'm gonna make you do whatever you can do. And then I would go to school and be like, no, I can't do that. I'm gonna be different. And, so I don't think those two balanced out very well, but, we all survived it. School was terrible, but we survived it.
Totally. And I guess maybe the kids, like, they don't necessarily know what questions to ask. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's maybe something that for future, maybe we even talk about it here about what questions children need to ask, because I found that too with my disability especially as well. I used to wear very, very thick glasses in elementary school and high school, well, part of high school, and it was difficult because I think people just, they don't know what they don't understand, right? So they see someone who's physically different and therefore just kind of unfortunately write them off because they don't know what's, I don't say wrong with them, but how to help them and how to assist them. So did you find that too, where it was kind of like people didn't know how to ask the questions?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's where it came from, uh, kids' parents.
Right.
Because kids' parents were always like, I'd be walking down one way in the mall, and then they'd be like, A, don't stare. Like, they'd ask their kid not to stare. And then B, they would like pull them away as if like we were some sort of diseased human. And it's just
Right.
like, staring is just curiosity, right? So I actually welcome the stare. And
Right.
going back to the wonderful world of sounding like a hot pocket is ready out of the microwave, kids like the fact that I have wheels or that I have a horn or that my chair can tilt. That's all they care about. They don't care
Right.
that my brain doesn't work like them. They just care that I don't use my legs and instead I use wheels. Right?
Yeah.
Is there a particular story that you can think of, Laurel?
For me personally, let's see. So I was a pretty sassy kid. I still am a sassy kid. Um, Talking about the parents thing, I was really lucky because I had parents that were very forthcoming to me. So my parents were like, "Listen, not only are you a gangly redheaded kid, you also have these glasses that are thick enough to be doorstops and or a weapon." And so I was very grateful for that. And I think that might be controversial that like my parents were so forthcoming, but I really appreciated it because they were honest. They're like, you look different. And probably just based on how society is, you're gonna get made fun of. People are gonna say things to you. And that is not a reflection on you, that's a reflection on them. So I can't say that the bullying, and we can get into specific stories, and I will. I can't say that it didn't bother me at the time, because of course it did, and it still stays with me now. Like I don't know, like what, 20 years later. But overall, I think I kind of understood what was going to happen. As a disabled person, I felt very insecure for a lot of my life. I've definitely pushed past a lot of that now, but I think I was afraid to advocate for myself or step up because I didn't want people to not like me. Like I wanted to make friends and I wanted to fit in, even though truthfully and just based visually, I didn't. Right. So I think it's that fine line of advocating for yourself, but also, at least for me, I felt, oh man, if I advocated for myself, maybe maybe I would lose friends or people would think I'm a tattletale or whatever. And so I think that's a challenging balance, at least for me it was.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the thing that kind of gets lost is that at that age, going through school, whatever grade it is, like you at some point have to rely on the adults in your life to do that advocating, and sometimes we just don't have the people that are willing to do that. Sometimes they just tell you to fit in because it's your only option, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think I'm very thankful for the way my parents dealt with things, because it was just like I had that separation of really interesting slash crappy experiences, on the recess playground or whatever. But then I could go home and be like, okay, life isn't bad. I sit for a living, right?
Like, did your parents kind of do that similar to mine, where they were like, "Hey, Carly, this is your situation. Please know it's not you. Like, this is just how it's going to be." Like, did they give you any kind of heads up on that, or you just kind of navigated?
Not really, because I don't think they knew, because CP is just one of those disabilities where like you could go from all the way nonverbal and severely developmentally delayed to, a little bit of a limp and a genius, right? So CP is a spectrum. It's not like your case where it's genetic and your parents kind of knew what was coming. Mine were
Right.
like, well, we'll just try a bunch of stuff and hope she likes some of it. Like, my parents used to make me make this binder of like what, why, like, why I'm in the position that I'm in. Like, it'd be like, and Carly was born 9 weeks early, and then she stayed in the NICU, and it was like this whole life story. But they thought that if everyone knew my life story and why I was the way I was, then they'd stop bugging me. Didn't really help.
Hmm. Wait, so did you have so you had did you have like a scrapbook of your life that you would give out to people? Like, did you have like a Carly pamphlet?
Yeah, I did. I did.
I'm intrigued by this.
I still have it.
I love that for you.
It's a binder.
Can I please have that?
When I clean out my parents' basement, I will find it for you.
I really would like to see that. Did it have a cool name, or it was just like Carly's life story? The Niece Chronicles?
No, it was the ugliest. It was the ugliest baby book you've ever seen in your life. But that's okay.
Do you remember those? Was it like a Lisa Frank binder? Like, did it have some 90s pizzazz? Was it collage? Like, I am living for this concept of this life binder. I know we're off subject, but I need to know, how in depth did we go?
Oh no, it looked like your 80-year-old grandmother made it for me. Like, it was like handmade with cloth and a whackload of lace and doilies, and it was glorious.
I weirdly love that. I think that is incredible. I think that is just fantastic.
Every time I moved, I would have to schedule a time with the teacher to go over the binder, and then she would ask all the awkward questions,
Right.
assuming that my teacher was female. If she would ask all the weird questions, and then we'd have to schedule a time with the classmates. Like, it was a whole thing. I hated moving in general because moving just sucks. But then you add like an extra 2 days of explaining, and you want to lose your mind.
I find that so interesting because I had such a different experience than what I had, because mine was like, I walked in with glasses on, I sat down, and people were like, okay, well, she's clearly visually impaired. Like, I didn't really have a lot of backstory for myself. So I find that super intriguing. That's interesting.
And I would find too that, like, from that conversation, presentation, whatever you want to call it, that like 3 or 4 friends would still come up to me and be like, I want to be your friend. And those would be the people that would stick with me. And some of them, like one of them I literally just talked to like half an hour ago. So some of them are still friends. But then you get the other half of the people that are like, oh, great, now I have something against her, right? So it
Right.
was
Right.
just this
Right.
weird balance of, I was really happy to find friends and at least have someone that I could, talk to,
Yeah.
and I don't even know what I did as an elementary school kid. Like, I don't even feel like I had a social life other than, the odd sleepover.
Yeah. I was very fortunate. Like, if my elementary school friends are listening, I love you guys. Thank you so much. Because I've had those same friends since elementary school for all of my life, and they're still in my life now. And I'm so grateful to them because they were the ones that just saw me for me, and I really really appreciate what they did for me. Um, and yeah, I just adore them. But I don't want to sit here. I think that there's a fine line there though, because say if you are a listener and you are getting bullied and maybe you feel like you don't have friends, I just want to reiterate that there will always be people in your life that will understand you and accept you. And it might not be right away, it might not be until later in your life, but there always will be people that will get you and want to be friends with you. And so I think that's important to note too, where, you know, Carly and I were very fortunate that we had people in our lives so young. But I just want to reiterate that I think sometimes, especially now with social media and all these other things that the next generation has to contend with, I think it's
Oh my gosh, can you imagine living in a world where like social media would be a thing like in school? I would have lost my mind.
yeah, I am so grateful that we grew up without social media, because I think that would have played a massive factor, I think, in my mental well-being while growing up.
Yeah.
You know, because it the bullying goes home, the bullying follows you.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that if someone is in that situation and they feel like that, just to know that eventually it will stop. It might take a while, it might, you know, be later in your life. And I think it's realizing that like the people that are bullying you don't have power over you. You
No.
know, like I think we get in our minds that these people that are bullying us are so great, and they're not. They're bullying you. They're not good folks, you know? They shouldn't be doing that. So yeah, I think that's important. But
It's not worth being part of the clique, my friends. Be you.
yeah, definitely not. And I don't know about you, Carly, and I don't, maybe it's a different tangent. I don't know if you had a specific bully. I had a couple specific bullies.
Yep.
And I don't want to sit here and glorify bullying because it's not okay. If you are getting bullied, it's not okay. If you are a bully, stop. Like, stop doing that. But what I have noticed, at least for me, is a lot of the people that bullied me growing up were, I would argue, in more difficult situations than I was. Because the people bullying me were kids that were, maybe they had a disability themselves, or they had a lot of pressure from their parents, or their parents were getting divorced. Like, as I got older and I started reflecting on my days being bullied, a lot of the folks that were causing pain to me were also in great pain themselves. And once again, I don't think that justifies it. I don't think that makes it okay. But I think having that, at least for me, having that emotional awareness was super helpful. So I'm like, okay, so you're hurting. You know that saying when they say hurt people hurt people? I realized that as I got older, because these people that were hurting me were hurting themselves. And so I kind of made me have a little bit more compassion, because the thing is I got to go home to a loving family. I got to have wonderful friends. And these folks that were bullying me might not have had the same thing. So I kind of, at least for me, found some weird solace in that. Not that they were hurting, but realizing that that might be why they're acting the way that they are.
How mature of you, Miss Laurel. I realize that now as well. But in school, I didn't get that either. I was like, you can go away. Like, I don't want to deal with you anymore. But as an adult, I 100% realize that now. And I think that's the only time that I really noticed that growing up was when we got into like junior high and high school, and the sense of like when our friends started to become their own humans and like decide what they wanted to do after school, and they had choices in extracurricular and all that stuff. Like, I then started to take notice of it then, but it took till grade 9 or 10 to realize that.
Yeah, I think for me, I caught on pretty quickly when I was in high school, same thing as you. And there was actually, and I'm sorry I keep going on tangents about stories, but as we're talking about it, and there was this person who I won't name. I will give him a different name. Let's call him Troy. And Troy was popular, and he was an athlete, and he was all of the things. And he would like to pretend to ask me out on a date. and it was him and his other friend, and they would basically mock me and try to ask me and my other friend out on dates because we were quote unquote losers. And I remember at that point being aware of what was happening. So there was one point I was like, yeah, absolutely, you can have my phone number. Are you ready? And he was like, yeah, okay. And he's like getting his piece of paper and pretending to write it down. I'm like, it is 604 926. Go F yourself. And he was like, whoa, okay, there's sass here. And I kind of started standing up for the other friend who was more quiet. However, to get back to my story, is that this person, I would help out sometimes in the learning center at my school. And he actually, and I don't want to expose him, but he had a learning disorder, and he would come to the center that I worked at or helped out at. And we at one point got sat together in an English class, and we had to do Shakespeare. And Shakespeare, of course, is notoriously hard to read. I sat beside him and I put my book in front of my face and I whispered, because we would go like, you would go, like I would say it, then the person beside me would say it, then the next person. So you would read a line each and then you would go throughout the classroom. And so he was sitting beside me and I had a book in my hand. And so I would read my line and I would whisper the words to him that he would then re-say to the class. And I did that for pretty much all throughout high school because we had similar last names and we're always sitting beside each other. And I remember at the end of high school, he actually pulled me aside and he was like, I know I was terrible to you. I'm sorry, but you were always kind to me and I want you to know that I appreciated it. And it's shitty. I'm not like, once again, you being kind and someone being mean to you isn't necessarily an okay thing. But at the end of it, I rose above. I chose to be bigger and a better person than this person was to me. And I think in the end, he appreciated that. Now, that's not the case for everybody. Not everybody will reciprocate in that way. But I think that for me, at least, I found power in being the bigger person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally does.
I wanted to, you know what I mean? Like, because it just, and it sucks to get bullied and it sucks to be made to feel like you don't matter, but you do matter. And I literally didn't, I proved that to myself by literally helping out the exact person that was making me feel small. I gained strength and love for myself to be like, oh yeah, you're making fun of me, but I'm helping you now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think for me going into high school, it was a weird world because um I had found that I had liked, you know, drama and choir and all the artsy things. Like that was my jam and those are the people that I hung out with all the time. But then I would have to like turn around after those classes and go back to my special ed room. Like, because that's where I had to learn from, right? And my
Right.
school wasn't super, like it was accessible, but there weren't too many folks that were disabled but also in the mainstream of education. Does that make sense?
I was just, yeah, same. I was one of the only ones in my classes too. Yeah.
Yeah, like I had a little bit of a learning disability, but that mostly had to do with math and numbers and spatial awareness and all this stuff that I never used. But other than that, I was pretty mainstream. So I would have to go back into a room full of 8 to 10 autistic boys who only interest was ever like computer games and something technological.
Mm,
And then all of a sudden they'd be like, "Hey, cyborg, what's up?" And it was a thing of like, great, so that's what I'm kind of known as, like, and to them I couldn't be like, well, actually I'm not. Like that was their way of, that's how their brain worked and that was their way of relating to me, because like
right.
if I was a cyborg then I was cool enough to quote unquote hang out with them. And as it turned out, I eventually, like, it grew on me and it
Yeah.
became a name that I actually enjoyed. But it was really weird kind of living that split life of like you found your thing, you found your people you want to hang out with, but then at the end of the day, you're still disabled and you're still whatever, and you'll still need help with this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
So then you have to go meld back into that world. So for me, like going into high school, it wasn't as much navigating outward bullies, like physical humans.
Right.
It was more navigating the inner thoughts of like, where do I actually belong? And it totally stemmed from the world of elementary school and junior high bullies, in the sense of like I can still picture them there
Yeah.
telling me the exact same thing that's now like melded into my brain.
Yeah.
So whatever happens, in 10 years ago, still stick with you, I think.
I totally agree. Like, I still remember certain things kids said to me even now, 20 years later, you know? So it definitely does have an impact. For me, the interesting part is I actually started wearing contacts pretty much right after I got into high school. So I graduated, at least from where I was from, we had middle school. And then when I went into high school, my glasses that summer, I transitioned into wearing contacts. I still have my glasses sometimes because contacts were a challenge for me to get used to. But through most of my high school experience, I didn't have glasses. And we'll probably talk about this on another podcast topic. I think it's too big for this one. But there was a long period of my life, well, even now, where I don't outwardly present as disabled. So a lot of people don't even know. So if you're listening to this podcast and this is your first time, surprise, hello. But yeah, so a lot of my high school experience, I didn't have an outward facing disability because I didn't have my glasses. However, as you mentioned, Carly, I am with you on that, where I think I always will, but especially in high school, I always still felt like that disabled kid from elementary school that kind of was made fun of and like picked on. And so
Yep.
for me, like, I had no self-worth in high school. I had no respect for myself. I had no self-esteem. I definitely wasn't in, I would say, to be honest, I was probably in a better place in elementary school and middle school than when I got to high school.
I was just gonna say that. It's the same for me. Yeah.
Yeah, like there was a huge part of myself that, at least in my situation, I'd love to hear more about yours, that was gone, and I was trying to navigate. Okay, I don't look disabled anymore, but I still am, and like half these people know that I was, but also like I think I had to hide a lot of myself more in high school than any other time.
See, I didn't necessarily. I kind of did the opposite that you did, Laurel.
Yeah.
Like I started out in very young elementary with a walker,
Yeah.
and then kind of was like the longer the distances that I had to walk, it was like, yeah, that's not gonna work anymore. So like I went from quote unquote kind of looking normal or fitting in to like, nope, a wheelchair is where we're gonna stay. So for me, it was just kind of like navigating that whole aspect of things.
Yeah, because I guess as you mentioned before, like CP is it can kind of, I don't know if progressive is the right word. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it can maybe change. Like it can change different forms.
Yeah, it can 100% change, and that's what we just found out. Like for me, it was a sense of, did I actually want to be able to come home from school and do extracurricular things, or did I just want to come home from school and crash? Because I could have kept using my walker. Like even now as an adult, I can still use a walker, quote unquote. Is it the smartest thing to do? Probably not. So like everyone through school kind of got to watch me go through that transition.
Mm-hmm.
And that transition for me also included a lot of surgery. So
Yeah.
I missed a lot of schools. I spent a lot of time being homeschooled for May and June of a lot of years. So like for me, elementary school, it just kind of felt like normal. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was just a thing that I did. It was almost scheduled, right? Like it wasn't a thing. But then when I got into high school and actually started thinking about becoming an adult,
Mm-hmm.
that was when like that whole battle of self-worth really hit me, because it was like, well, I wasn't that successful in school with other humans. How the heck am I going to be successful with other humans? Like, once I graduate high school, go into university and get a
Right.
real job. You know what I mean? Like, it was that constant doubting of
Mhm.
self versus, like, okay, this is just another year, another surgery, another step, right?
Right. So how did you? It's interesting you say that because I met you later in life. We've been friends what 5 6 years now. So I met you through our current, well, not current anymore, but a former employer that we both met at. And I'm just curious from your perspective, especially for our younger listeners, how did you transition? And I don't want to speak for you because I definitely know I still have some self esteem stuff, but I'm much more confident than I was. But how did you transition from that high school girl that maybe was worried about her future to now being somebody who is very active in her community and has had multiple jobs? And so how did you kind of overcome that stigma that you maybe set for yourself?
I don't know if I entirely have yet,
Mhm.
Laurel.
Okay.
Like, I think that's always going to be a thing that kind of sits with me, which is fine. Because there are some really great days of like, man, this is cool. I get a power chair, blah 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 blah. And then there are other days where I just want to go out for drinks, but nothing is accessible. So that's kind of, a downer. So, but I think the important thing to realize is that, like, you have the power to change your day,
Right.
and you have the power to kind of pick three things that are awesome and full of gratitude. And I, like, as an adult, I think one of the things that have helped me the most is a gratitude journal. Like, what are three things throughout my day that are gonna be okay? Like, forget about everything else that's gonna go, you know, that's gonna fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
But what are three things that I can count on being pretty dang awesome, right? So it's just about finding those glimmers of hope and kind of figuring out what works for you, and also giving yourself the time and space to live in that world of life sucks.
Yeah.
If you don't live in that world for a little bit, then it's just going to keep building and building and building and building until you can't handle it anymore. And it becomes a whole other mental health struggle that no one wants or needs now.
Hmm.
So I think just finding glimmers of hope and finding humans that you like
Yeah.
and that can kind of steer you in the right direction, or at least make you laugh, or the ones you can call up at midnight and be like, today sucked, please tell me something that was awesome. So it's about surrounding yourself with people you love, or pets that you love, or just making a happy spot in your apartment.
Yeah, or things if you're more introverted, things that you love.
Yeah. Yeah, like, sometimes my good days are just sitting in front of, or sitting, binging Netflix and having my weighted blanket on me. That's great. That's
Watching
fantastic.
your 90 Day Fiance.
Right?
But I think that's important, as Carly mentioned, to also, yeah, find your joy when you can. It's okay to not always have happy days, and it's okay to be sad sometimes. But I think that finding happiness where you can is super important, and also communicating with people. So if you are going through something and you do need help, find somebody to talk to. I know it's such a cliche thing that people say, but the truth is you're not alone, and there are people that are here to help you and listen and support you. So I just wanted to say that to our listeners. But
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna add to that, that it doesn't always have to be, when you go and talk to other folks, it's not always about using your words. You can use other ways of expressing yourself as well. Like, I struggled with talking to someone. I hated going to therapy as a kid, but, like, what really helped was, like, putting together a playlist or drawing something about my day that
right.
that wasn't the best. So it's just about sitting there and kind of realizing where your comfort zone is, but how you can communicate effectively that won't make you want to pull your hair out. You know what I mean?
Totally. Okay. Well, any other advice or stories maybe you want to tell? Maybe more. I'm trying to think of any humorous. I know bullying isn't necessarily humorous, but maybe things that have come up that are interesting. My favorite. Do you have a favorite nickname and or as the kids say, burn that someone has ever said to you?
I got Carl a lot, and like Carl's and Car, and like people like and it took me forever to realize that Car was just really shortening for Carly, but really it was like, do you have to call me a object? Like, what are you doing to me? Like, so those were like the nicknames that I got growing up. I didn't particularly get any sort of bad weird ones. Like
Right.
it was just kind of but I think people were just, they didn't quite know what to do with me,
Right.
similar to some folks nowadays, right? So they would keep quiet and do other things to me that would be considered bullying, right?
Yeah, true. It is definitely more of a challenge to make fun of a disabled person because that's kind of a really a really unfortunate thing to do. You know, like you shouldn't make fun of anybody anyway.
Yeah.
But I think that that's another level of silliness. But
But on the flip side of things, it's something that for some people were easier to do than making fun of our able-bodied friend right next to us, right? Because there was always something they could pick on, right?
yeah, you're right.
Like for me, sometimes it was how I walked, and like I often wore skirts because they were more comfortable than wearing jeans. So like some people would hold down my, like step on my skirt from behind me and make jokes on how I walk, or little things like that. It was like an obvious way to be like, let's make Carly's day miserable, right?
Right. People suck.
Yeah, they really do.
I wanted to share my nickname, which I think was a great one. Well, it wasn't a nickname. I had this particular bully in elementary school who, once again, I will not name for his security in life. But I remember he was making fun of me, and
Yeah.
he looked me right in the eye, and he's like, "You're so weird. You're so ugly. You're so strange, Laurel Coral." And I remember thinking, and I literally said this to him, I was like, "Good one. Whoa, sick burn." Because I was like, what? I just remember being a kid. I was like maybe like I don't know, 8 years old. But like, is that all you have? Is coral? Like, am I the Great Barrier Reef up in this? Like I I don't understand. It was just so funny to me. It's like that's one of the most silly nicknames I've ever heard. Luckily, it didn't stick. It didn't last for bullying purposes because it was just dumb. But yeah, I'm really grateful that my parents gave me a name that didn't really rhyme with anything. I'm grateful for that. Because that could have gone south for me really quickly.
Yep.
But
Did someone ever say something really off-putting to you, and then all you could think of was thank you? Like you had nothing else to say to them, like you had no other snarky comment, and then you would say something like I appreciate it, just to annoy them.
well, and I want to touch on that. It's funny you say that because I think that that's I don't want to say it's a tactic because I don't once again want to condone it, but I noticed for me that I found finding humor in it or agreeing with a bully was super helpful because they have nowhere to go, right? Because
Yeah.
someone's like, "You're
Yeah.
stupid." You're like, "Actually, yeah, I think maybe I am." Or like, "You smell." Do I? Yeah, like maybe I forgot deodorant. They have nowhere to go because you've kind of already shut down what they're saying to you. So it's funny you say that 'cause
You've met them where they're at.
yeah, exactly. Like I found that for me, I
Yeah.
learned that in elementary school that it didn't lead the bullies anywhere. Like if I shut them down, and I think the challenge is that you have to be, at least for me, you have to be mindful, right? Because violence never works on violence, right? Like then it's just going to get worse for you at least. So and also maybe letting a bully see that you're super weak also can maybe a challenge because they know they can keep getting you and getting you and getting you. So even if
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of my confidence was completely false. My confidence wasn't truthful. I would definitely, if someone said, Laurel, you're so ugly, or Laurel, you're so weird, I 100% went to my room that night and cried about it.
Yep.
Absolutely. I'm a human and it hurts, right? But in the moment, I found, at least for me, it was helpful to be strong and be like, oh, thank you for that feedback. Or, oh, really? I didn't know that. And I think that I wasn't in the position where I didn't feel it, because of course I felt it, and of course it felt terrible. But I think that if I were to cry in front of the bully or show the bully that I was weak per se, it would have made it worse for me.
Yeah.
But if that is how you react to something, that's also fine. Like, it's okay if you're in a more if you want to react that way. There's no wrong or right way to react when somebody says something negative to you. But for me, at least, I found it was way easier to, in the moment, be like, put my fake armor on, my fake glittery shiny armor, and I was like, your words don't hurt me. And then when I get home, I take it off and I do my nice little cry. But I think it's important that, armor off or on, you still can pick yourself up and keep pushing forward.
Yeah, and I think that's something. Actually, that armor analogy is great because I can tell you 100% that I did that, and that every single disabled person had to do that
Yeah.
because they had to find some way to fit themselves in so they could last another 12 years through the grade school system and then however else long through their adulthood. So I think remembering though that armor can come on and off
Mm-hmm.
when you need it to, and it should come on and off as you need it to.
And you can build it up too. You
Yeah,
can you can add more pieces to it. Like, if you love a little rainbow moment, make your armor any color you want. If you love glitter, freaking slap that shit on. Make it like as shiny as you want it to be. Like, whatever your armor, or maybe it's not even like metal. If your armor is a cloak or I don't know, whatever you want to make yourself feel empowered. Put that over you when someone is saying something mean to you, and then when you get home, feel free to take it off.
yeah,
Because I think if you wear it constantly, I think that's how you have maybe bigger issues that come up. So you have to find the balance.
yeah. I always like to imagine, like, I had to wear these braces as a kid, like on my legs. So I always like to imagine that my braces would match my like external like armor or cape or whatever I was going
Right.
with that day. So some days my armor had like butterflies on it, and then other days it had Wonder Woman on it. And then I'm sure my mother like loves the fact that I had so many pairs of braces as a kid, but it was just a thing. Like I had to make everything match in order for me to literally feel like a superhero, and that was mostly how I coped aside from humor.
I love a coordination moment. Don't even get me started.
Right?
Like, just head to toe. Give me that monochrome, Give me that cohesive look. Like, literally, the queer guys are quaking. I love that for you. I think that is incredible. That's the path you took. I was the opposite. I just threw on anything. Like, there are pictures of me that are just horrific. I'm like, did I just go to Justice, which wasn't around at the time? I forget what it was called back in the day for us, and buy every monkey glitter shirt with crazy colored pants that I could find. Like, did I think I must have just grabbed anything that I thought would work and threw it on my body. It was incredible. It was a look.
And yet, if you ask me as an adult, I am, sitting here in as comfy as you can possibly get, because that's what good. That's what pandemic life lives now. But as a kid, I like to imagine that I was pretty fantastic dresser.
I am really grateful that I have progressed in that way. Not bullying related, but I dressed horrifically. Like, I don't know. I'd like to blame it on my visual impairment, but I genuinely can't. It was like, it was just, I don't even know how to describe it. It was, and I want to say it was like the 90s, but it wasn't. It was just me blindly going through the stores and picking out the craziest patterns I could find, and then thinking they were cohesive, thinking they worked. But you know what? Thrive. Live your best moment.
The moral of the story now is that as adults, we still deserve wearing that armor and we still deserve wearing that cape. So let's go find the glitteriest thing, or the thing with the most leopard print, or just the loudest thing in our closet, and put it on and make every other negative person in our lives go away.
Totally. All right. Well, should we maybe slowly wrap up here and jump into our disabled as folk moment?
Sure. Do you want to introduce what that is, Laurel?
Sure. So, at the end of every episode, we like to talk about our disabled as folk moment. So, essentially, this moment is it can be anything, whether it be our biggest triumph or epic fail of living life with a disability. So it doesn't necessarily have to be bullying related for this topic, just in general, something that we've experienced in the course of our lives that is either triumphant or really unfortunate. Do you have one, Carly?
I do, and it actually involves us. I would say in like the first year that we knew each other. It was pretty early on.
Mine involves us too, so I love this. Okay.
I
Go ahead.
wonder if we'll literally have the same story because that's hilarious. But mine was when we were coming home from a theater show, and one of us decided that we had to, I don't, go to the washroom or something. So we went into this little cafe. It was like perfectly fine and semi-accessible, except
Oh my god, yeah, I know what you're gonna say.
the doors in the front weren't automatic. So what do? I just get Laurel to open and close things as usual. So we get in, we do what we need to do, and then on our way out, I shout at Laurel, who at that point is behind me, and say, "Hey, Laurel, want to grab the door?" And then you turn to me while there's still people in the cafe eating their foods and whatever. But you turn to me and say, "Nope, you get it yourself." And there was like 4 tables by the door that gave you the best death glare I have ever seen in my life. And then 2 little old ladies that like rush over to me and try to help me get out of a fairly small door. And then we're just sitting there, like, I had nothing else to say but to start laughing. And I think one of the folks by the door was like, "Do you know this person?" And then I had nothing else to say to that other than just walking out. And I think we got out and we gave each other like the lamest high five you could possibly think of.
It was horrific. Like it was like I didn't even know how to describe it, but these people were glaring at me as if I was just the scum of the earth. And something I should preface with that story is I'm a very sarcastic person. You will learn this as we get more into these episodes. So of course I was going to help her. Of course I helped her get in. Of course I'm going to help her get out. Not that. And once again, if Carly doesn't need the help, I won't do it because she's more than capable on her own. But yeah, I love that story because people were looking as if I was just this horrific person, and I was like, we got in somehow. We're gonna get out just fine." But yeah, that was a funny one. Mine is similar too. Actually, it was a you and I story, and we were at Original Joe's. R.I.P. The location is now gone. It was a great spot. We loved it. Um, but I knew that we were meant to be friends because it was a disaster. So essentially, you were at the table with your former service dog, Oakley, and we were about to leave. And so I get up to go around. Usually I go in front of you because it's just easier for me to grab the doors or whatever. And there was a period where I'm walking through, and this restaurant had a pretty narrow hallway to get to the front door. And I hear, "Laurel, Laurel, Laurel." And I turn back around. And you're like, "Oh, I dropped my headphones." And so, something to note, Carly's service dogs are incredible animals. They can pick up a lot of things for her. Headphones, I don't want to speak for the dog. Sorry, Oakley, but they're harder to pick up. So Carly was like, "Laurel, can you please pick up my headphones?" And me being the visually impaired person that I was, I think they were like darker colored headphones, and the floor was also darker colored. And so truly, I knew that we were meant to be friends because I was trying to feel around on the floor to find these headphones while Carly, who's in her chair, unable to reach down to grab them, is giving me directions. And it was like, literally, "Laura, left. No, a little bit more left. Oh, no, no, you almost got it. Oh, a little bit down, a little bit over." And so I finally find these headphones and I give them to Carly. And we're talking like, it wasn't a long time, but for an able bodied person, it would have been a couple seconds. And for us, it was definitely a couple minutes. And I think that's when we really, like, we were always good friends, but I think we found the humor in each other and knowing that we are both there to help each other and support each other and care about each other. But ultimately, our disabilities are very different in a lot of ways. So I thought that was one of my top 10 stories for sure.
And you'd be happy to know that all of my service dogs at this point now know how to pick up headphones, so you will never have to do that again.
incredible. And I'm happy to do it. It just your dogs would be faster than me, I think, by a mile. But I am happy to do it.
Oh, I love this. This is great.
But anyway, I love this too, my friends. This has been a great chat. We are going to come back with another episode, so if you're interested in listening to that, please check it out. But episode 1 done, my friend. We did it.
Teamwork! Virtual high five!
Virtual high five. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks, all.
Disabled as Folk is possible thanks to support from TELUS STORYHIVE, the National Screen Institute, and Dave Shumka. This podcast was developed by us, Carly Neese and Laurel Carter.
Our producer is Mac Brock, with sound editing and music by Mustafa Rafiq, with music support from Ethan Bookma. For updates and exclusive content, you can find us on Instagram @DisabledAsFolk. Thanks for listening.